Good evening. I'd like to call the General Administration and Personnel Committee for the Village of Hoffman Estates for April 8th, 2019. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Arnett.
Present.
Vice Chairman Mills.
Present.
Trustee Stanton.
Present.
Trustee Newell.
Present.
Trustee Palafis. Trustee Gata.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. If I can get approval for the minutes for March 18th, 2019.
So moved. Second.
Any have any questions, corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We move on to reports for information only. Number 1 is the Cable TV Monthly Report. Any corrections or any see anything? Okay, we will receive and file that. Number 2 is the Human Resources Management Monthly Report. Okay, receive and file that as well. And number 3 is Legislative Operations and Outreach Monthly Report. Nothing further? Okay, we'll go ahead and receive and file that. Anything in the President's report, Mr. Mayor?
I'll wait till the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Nothing in President's report. I see nothing in other, no items in review. If I can have a motion for an adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We are adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the Transportation and Road Improvement Committee for April 8th, 2019. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Chairman Mills.
Present.
Vice Chairman Stanton.
Present.
Trustee Arnett.
Present.
Trustee Newell.
Present.
Trustee Palafis. Trustee Gata.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Look for a motion to approve the minutes of March 18th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. We have one item under new business tonight. Request approval of changes to traffic section of the municipal code.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Mr. Wiesner, these are basically housekeeping issues,
That is correct.
and it's just for making sure that all the street names and everything are included.
Are correct. There were a couple of streets that appear to have been omitted inadvertently. They've been added.
I think it's probably been a while since we updated it, too.
Possibly
So,
has been.
any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Under reports for information only, we have the Transportation Division Monthly Report. Any comments on that? Anything you wish to highlight?
Not at this time.
You know,
Yes, Trustee Stanton.
I did notice that the bus usage is going down on certain of the bus routes. Do we know why that's happening?
They appear to be the routes that serve the Prairie Stone Business Park and potentially may be due to the declining employment at Sears.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you, your department, for putting in about the columns that went up on Central Road Bike Bridge. I've been getting a lot of questions on that from people who think that's part of Hoffman. Anything else, Trustee Gata?
Yeah, Joe, what is the timeline on the Shoe Factory Road? Any idea?
We've heard 2 years for quite a while now.
So 2 years?
And at any
Maybe.
time, 2 years.
Trustee Gata, it's in the last year right now of the county's 5-year capital plan, but shown as unfunded. So our consultant is finishing up final engineering now, which then will release the county to move in and do final right-of-way acquisition. At that point in time, we'll be able to get the county to pick a firm year and hopefully fund it. Our guesstimate at this point is 2021.
Oh, that's not too far off, because we've only been waiting 15 years.
Joe said 2 years, and I just took 5 minutes longer to get it there.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Anything else? President's report?
I'll wait.
You're waiting, and I don't have anything else to come before this committee. We do still have one item in review, which is scheduled to come back next meeting, and that's the discussion of parking permit program in the Washington Boulevard and Alcoa Lane area. Other than that, I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. We are adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the Planning, Building, and Zoning Committee for the Village of Hoffman Estates on this April 8th, 2019. May we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Stanton.
Present.
Vice Chairman Arnett.
Present.
Trustee Mills.
Present.
Trustee Newell.
Present.
Trustee Palafis. Trustee Gata.
Present.
Mayor McLeod.
Present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. Approval of the minutes for March 18th, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Anybody notice any corrections or deletions that need to be made? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. New business, number 1, request by 5A7 LLC to extend the deadline for existing uses to remain on the Plum Farms 16-acre property at the northwest corner of Higgins Road and Old Sutton Road.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Peter, you want to tell us what this is about?
Sure. This was a very minor piece of the Plum Farms development agreement on the 16-acre parcel. The area in question is where you currently see the mulch sales, and there's some outdoor storage lots on the property. The agreement that was approved 2 years ago, which included rezoning and was an agreement that combined with the other 2 properties to the north, 185 or so acres total, contemplated that the existing uses on these sites would be eliminated 2 years from that date, which is this coming May. Obviously, there's been some delays in any type of development project moving forward for a variety of reasons, so the property owner is requesting an extension to allow those uses to remain for an additional 3 years. And he's here in the audience if you'd like him to speak. So this is just a simple, one of the small pieces of that agreement. If there's a favorable recommendation on an extension tonight, then we would draft the actual technical amendment to the agreement and come back with that formal amendment at a board meeting with an actual ordinance.
Mayor.
Yes. I think the village staff made a great argument for not extending it by talking about in the best interest of the village, you have the existing uses eliminated as soon as possible. It looks god-awful out there. And it'd be a lot easier to develop the property if you didn't have that monstrosity out there. It doesn't fit in at all with what we're looking to do on the west side. It doesn't fit in anywhere in Hoffman Estates at this point. It was the middle of nowhere at one point, but nowhere is somewhere now. So I don't support extending it, because I'll be in 3 years and want another extension.
Mr. Hayat Tarola, do you want to address us on this?
I do. My name is Anthony Ayatrola with 5A7 on behalf of the owner.
And your address, sir?
My address?
Yes.
Oh, 2385 Hammond Drive, Suite 14, Schaumburg, Illinois,
Okay.
60173. Well, I think for the most part, most of you understand the challenge that we've had with this piece of property, which is it's littered with construction debris and has been a challenge in the marketplace trying to transact this. The rents that we get from the tenants who also pay fees to the village are vital to the project. As you know, we're also engaged in a lawsuit with the Barringtons, with School District 220 and the neighbors across the street. And we want nothing better than to transact and make this property productive. But these rents are vital. And in addition, we have now experienced the reassessment by Cook County, and it's going to absolutely stress the ownership of this property if we don't have these rents. I really thought that by now that we would be able to transact this, but I think it's well documented with what lies under the soil and the challenges that we have. For the most part, we've been responsive. Anytime Pete has reached out to us with anything necessary to bring things into order, we've been responsive. If I'm not mistaken, Pete, to date, we're at code with everything. Mayor, we certainly we want to see these uses gone, and we want to work hard with your staff and with the village to find a financial solution through increment financing to make this productive. But I truly am at your mercy today that these rents are vital. And I wish it was different. And by the way, years ago, we met in a restaurant in West Dundee along the river, and the village had a vision for the property that it was something that we should own. We really had no intention to buy it, but the village thought that by assembling it with the rest of what we own, that it would round out and serve as a uniform development. And in fact, we took that step. And what we bought, quite frankly, has been a geologic nightmare. And so I strongly urge you guys to support the extension. I can tell you myself, just having lived through the last downturn, when we bought this piece, we actually financed it. And it was 4 of the worst years of my life, trying to save the piece, quite frankly. And then we recapitalized it, and we got rid of the debt, and there's no debt on the property. But these rents are vital, and we want to work hard with you guys to change these circumstances. But I truly urge you to support this.
You want only 3 years?
Gary, I think 3 years is an outside time, but I think it's fundamental. You know, we were in this past week with the mayor. I think Patty was with us, Jim, Mark, and we talked about some solutions. And we're hopeful that, you know, we can work hard with you guys as quickly as possible to try to find a solution that meets with financial acceptance to the marketplace. You know, the piece is upside down. I mean, thank God we own it, and there's no debt on it, but the piece is upside down. I mean, it's a tough go.
Anybody else with any other questions up here? Okay. There is a motion and a second for the request. That would be for the 3 years. I'm understanding, is that correct, Pete?
Right, it'd be 3 years from May 1st of this year.
Okay. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed? No.
All right, so motion passes 3-2.
4-2.
4-2, I'm sorry.
Much.
All right. Second is a request approval of a Northwest Housing Partnership as subrecipient to administer the Community Development Block Grant, the CDBG, Single Family Rehabilitation Project, and to approve execution of the proposed subrecipient agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
You can second.
Yeah. Before I get to you, Mayor, Peter, do you want to explain this one too? Or, okay.
This item's the annual agreement for Northwest Housing Partnership to administer the single-family rehab program. And that's something that Northwest Housing has done on behalf of the village for the past 12 years. The village receives funding from HUD for this program through our CDBG program. And eligible projects can include home safety issues being remediated, code violations, and home weatherization as well. Northwest Housing, as part of the agreement, would provide program outreach, process applications, and prepare contracts, and also coordinate the construction process.
Thank you. I noticed that we have a memo up here regarding some corrections to the agreement that we initially received. Which ones, what were the differences?
The differences were rather small. They're more of clarifications. The first is in the assignability section on page 17. It was, some of the text was taken out just to simplify it, in that the village doesn't put assignability into contracts typically. And then on page 19, there was more of a Scrivener's error in that paragraph D was referenced when it should have been paragraph 6.
Okay. Counsel?
Yeah, I believe Ms. Cross reviewed this particular document with staff, and so if there's anything specific, I'm sure she could also help assist. Those were specifically her changes.
Okay. Now, does this have to be, our motion and second have to be amended to include this, or is it already included?
It should be as amended.
The motion should be as amended so it can go on the consent agenda at the board meeting.
Okay.
Okay, as amended.
I agree with the second on that.
Thank you. Any other further, Mayor, do you have something on this?
No, you answered the questions.
Okay. Anybody else? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Third, discussion regarding the status of the proposal to remodel Bergman Farmhouse located at 2150 Algonquin Road.
So the representative of MI Homes is here today, as is Chad Evans from Case Properties, and they can both answer questions. The basic status as of today, if you recall, last fall, the board extended the final occupancy compliance date until the end of August 2019. Obviously, through this process, there have been several delays in getting started. As of a few months ago, the actual building permit is ready to be issued by the village. Plans have been approved, and it's just waiting for the home builder, home renovator to obtain the permit and establish the escrow account that needs to be established. My understanding is the last item they need to finish on their end would be obtaining approval.
Your mic went off somehow.
Yeah, it's there. Anyway, the last item is approval from IDOT regarding some minor work in the Algonquin Road right-of-way, at which point Case has indicated they would be obtaining the permit and moving forward. So it was requested by the board a month ago that this come back for a status update, since it is getting late in the process again. And would leave it to the applicants or the petitioner to comment on the construction time frame as to whether or not the August 31st date is still realistic or not.
Is someone here from Case? Yes. Could you come up and address us, please? Your name and then your address, please.
Chad Evans. My address is 2116 Kenton Lane, Libertyville.
Thank you. So what is going on now?
So right now, we're waiting on IDOT to issue the permit for ingress and egress to the property. It was submitted once. They came back with some revisions that they requested. I'm told by Manhard that we should have that permit within the next 2 weeks.
And if you were to get that permit in the next 2 weeks, you're going to be putting down the other two items that we were requesting?
Then I think all the variables would be known and we'd be able to move forward at that point.
All right. And what's your time frame as far as finishing the product?
Right now, pending that we get it in 2 weeks, I think we could feasibly finish by the end of September.
All right, so at some point, you'd have to come back here and ask for an extension of time. Is that correct? Okay. Unless we do it tonight.
Well, we said no further extensions to be granted.
That's true. But if they're already in the process, I don't know how you're going to stop it from being completed. Mayor?
It's only April.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot more reasons to extend in September if progress is made, in my mind, than there is now.
I agree with you. Okay, yes, Trustee Mills.
Can I ask why you haven't at least brought in the escrow and show in good faith that you were going to be doing it?
We can set up the escrow, but I'd like to, I didn't want to pull a permit not knowing where we're going to be as far as access to the property.
What, do you have any access at all right now?
There is access to the
Okay.
property, but we don't have
So if you
jurisdiction
don't
over
get
it, nor does
if
the
you were,
village.
if you were to not get the access, would you just dump the whole project then?
Well, yeah, I mean, if there was unusable access, definitely.
Okay.
The state cannot deny access to an existing piece of platted
Yeah.
property. It's a taking. The reality is, more than likely, they're going to end up having to consolidate the two curb cuts. I'm guessing that's what they made you do.
That's what the submittal was.
Right, so, but I can understand it, because the escrow is a function of the overall cost of the project, if I remember correctly. I'm getting a shake of the head yes from the representative from M&I. So they can't really fully fund the escrow till they have the estimate on what the IDOT right-of-way construction is going to be, but they could pull the permit, the building permit, as a sign of good faith.
There's no reason for that not to be pulled. And please, I would recommend you, Mr. Evans, keep in touch with the village, because it seems that we keep hearing that they haven't been able to get any responses.
Okay.
So that is mostly very important that you keep in touch with them.
Okay, I'll make
So
sure
they
to
know
do a
what's
better
going
job
on.
of that.
Anything else from any other member of the board up here? Okay, I guess we had our discussion.
If I could,
Yes.
if there hasn't been progress by a certain time, should this come back? If the building permit's not pulled and the escrow's not funded and the village determines that IDOT has resolved the access issue and a permit's been issued,
How about we make a motion to continue this for 1 month?
and leave it in items and review?
Yeah.
Or bring it back on the next agenda?
Bring it back on the
for
next
status.
agenda, just to get an update, make sure everything's moving.
We'll be happy to do that.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion to put this over for a month. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, see you in a month and see what happens. All right. Fourth, we have a presentation of the draft West Area Plan Study by the Lakota Group. Gentlemen, are you ready?
Okay. Okay, well, good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Mike Kritzman. I'm with the Lakota Group. I'm also here with Kevin Clark from Lakota Group. Really briefly, just about who we are and what we do. We are an urban design and planning firm. We also do landscape architecture and kind of cover the full range of design and strategy and theory of the built environment. So I've got a presentation here. Doesn't look like the screens are on.
I can't get it to go on here. Have you refreshed your screen since
I
you're
wanna
plugged
see.
in?
Let's see.
This is why we're changing the system out.
For the audience out there, we're sorry for the technical difficulties, but hopefully we'll get it going.
Just had it.
It worked before, right?
Yeah, we just tested it.
We had it working before the meeting.
It is.
No? Okay, well, sorry about this. So we thought we had it ready to go. So really quick background on the primer of the project. What we're essentially doing here is studying kind of the prevailing trends, patterns, land use patterns, what's happening now, what's the context of what we're calling the Western Area Plan. So the area of the community, of the village, generally pinpointed by Prairie Stone Business Park, as well as some large parts of land around there in that area. So part of this is looking at what are the factors happening within the village, within that property, within competing properties in the surrounding area, and then also just happening within the region of Chicago, within the Midwest, within the country, internationally. What are the trends, what's happening with these types of environments, business parks? As I think we all probably know, big changes are happening in the way people work, where they go to work, how they live, and all of that. So we've been studying, we've started this project around October, and we kind of came together with our initial findings, existing conditions, if you want to call it that, roughly in January. And then since then, we've been working to kind of come up with some proposals, land use changes, things like that.
Just keep going, Mike.
Okay. Oh, here I got it. So, process-wise, I think important point of this is some major touch points with what we call area stakeholders. We define those as anyone with vested interest in the properties out there, expertise, local knowledge, things like that. Here. Right there. Nope. Let me do this. Okay. So, we spoke to business owners, property owners, developers, real estate agents, brokers, experts in that area. We spoke with people who run local businesses, employees of local businesses, people who represent the types of people we're hoping to see and attract larger amounts of in the future. We spoke with important local agencies, some of the school districts in the area, local officials, trying, in our case, to get as wide and broad a set of perspectives as we can, because what we understand is the best experts are people who are here, who have the land, who have history with the land and the community, and really understand it from that side.
Let me stop you for a second and ask you a question.
Sure.
Do you need, I would think you need.
Yeah.
The
We're coming up
machine
on the key point here. So I've got the primary background, I'll keep it moving.
Yeah, because, I mean, right now, it seems like we're watching the people behind the screen, like, you know, in Oz, and not paying attention to what you're saying.
Okay.
I'm wondering whether we should just hold off on this until everything's starting to work again.
Sounds good to me.
When's the new system coming?
Yeah.
Isn't it the end of the month?
Next month, yeah.
That's what I thought.
It's funny, we connected this before, it plugged right in and went right up, so I'm not sure what's going on here, and I apologize for the difficulties.
See when you do this? That's
You're not the first.
laptop,
Okay,
TV,
all right, good.
laptop, nothing. Make sure it's all right on there. This doesn't do anything. If it doesn't work, I would suggest, and I know it's a burden to these guys, but we just table
Come
it
back
till
next
next month.
month.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
too important not to have this stuff.
And I'll say this, we're also prepared, so I think what you have in your packet, I was just going to get into this, is we did extensive existing conditions, market analysis and all that.
Well,
analysis and all
it's
that.
nice that you can talk to us, but if there's people that are watching on TV as well, and I think they would like to see what you're talking about at
Okay.
the
I was gonna say,
same
we're
time.
prepared with some really beautiful printed exhibits, too, but that doesn't
They
sound
are
right.
nice.
Why don't we pass this for a second, to see whether or not we can get things going, and we'll
You wanna-
move on to number 5. All right, number 5 is a request approval of a resolution providing general guidelines in design, stealth, and concealment standards for small wireless facilities.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Peter, you want to take this one?
Sure. So this is an update of, well, I guess an update. It's a more extensive set of guidelines and standards regarding small cell installations. As I'm sure most of you are aware, the state and the federal government have been actively passing laws and policies that regulate small cell antennas in neighborhoods, and they in some of those some of the legislation, they restrict what municipalities can and can't do. In a lot of cases, they're deferring to our rules as long as we have formally adopted guidelines and standards. They're trying to remove some of the subjectivity that municipalities may normally have reviewing kind of normal land use proposals. So the whole notion of antennas, although they've always been regulated by the FCC to some level, it's getting more and more stringent and further limiting what we can and can't do. So this document is really memorializing some very specific guidelines and design standards that would help us deal with proposals to put small cell antennas. Typically, these would be requested to be installed on village streetlights. I think we may have 3 of them in town that Verizon did. We had done a master agreement several years ago. That's all they've ever implemented at this point, but we do expect that in the upcoming years, there's going to be potentially a increase in the number of those. A lot of the things you'll see in this document are, I would say from a practical standpoint, they're things we would normally do anyway through a permit process, and in an everyday course of business, the village is able to make sure that poles are structurally sound and require the applicant to do certain things in a certain way, good workmanship and such, things like that. But because of the laws being adopted by the state and federal government, it's important that we actually spell all these things out very clearly in a document. And as long as the board has adopted this, some type of design standard like this in writing, it's available to the carriers to see, we can now comfortably enforce these things under the current state and federal laws. So again, this is really, it's not anything necessarily groundbreaking. It's probably gives us a little bit more specific control, but it definitely will help keep us on a level playing field when it comes to responding to antenna requests. It's anticipated that since this is really dealing with antennas that would be installed on village utility poles, village streetlights, the Public Works Department would likely be the one reviewing these applications, since it's going hand in hand with their, the poles that they maintain. So if there's questions about this, this has been a joint effort really spearheaded by Doug Lasota, who's been tracking the legislation and making sure that what we do is appropriate for the kind of at least the future as we see it today. But I can answer questions if there are any.
Anyone up here with any questions? Art, you don't have a question, you have some comment, I think.
No, I actually have a question.
Okay.
I know Doug has been working on this quite a bit, and he's on trial with Patty and myself downtown, so he was taking care of some of the work when we left. My question was, were these particular documents that are before the board now mainly for the right-of-way antennas?
Yes.
100% for the right-of-way. The changes we made in the larger antennas, those changes were made a year ago.
Yeah. And for the board's edification, there is a big difference between village property and village facilities that are on village-owned property, which is not a public right-of-way, and facilities that are on dedicated public right-of-ways. And that's pretty much a function of the state of Illinois and the federal government that have kind of preempted the village in regulating facilities, even village-owned facilities, that are on a public right-of-way.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions or issues up here? All right, we have a motion and a second for this resolution. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, I guess status of number 4, where are we?
Well, it's not looking good.
No, it's not.
Give it a rest first.
Another shot with a different computer and see if it works.
You think we can just put this in the mail?
In the mail?
Yeah. Just mail this.
Well, I read the computer on.
Then he'll have it in case he needs it for resolution.
There should be something on the monitor. Just on the front of the podium. So what's your?
Oh, there you go. Okay. All right, we're in business, I think.
Oh, look at you.
How about that?
Okay.
Let's give Bruce a hand.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so my apologies for that. We thought we had that ready to go. I know we're going to try to keep it brief, and I know the hope and the intent with staff too is to have some discussion. I should say that this process, where we're at today, we're not here with some formal proposal for a new plan, for any type of code changes or anything like that. This is meant to be research findings to help to kind of provide a basis for what we understand and we think will be an ongoing, continuing discussion within the community, leading up, even including to, say, part of the upcoming comprehensive plan update, things like that. So in our view, this is kind of a stepping stone to move forward with some larger planning in the future and ideas in the future. Here's a timeline. So I was kind of getting into that at the beginning. We started in October. We met with folks, did kind of the due diligence up front, analysis, things like that, delivered our existing conditions and market findings, which provided a snapshot around the end of the year. I should point out, there's just a little caveat to that time, that a lot has changed and is continuing to change. When we started this, AT&T was just entering that process. So we didn't know what was happening with Sears, and we were rewriting that portion of our findings almost every single day in January based on all that. But the real goal of this in our minds is to develop what we say is a dynamic land use and development framework that ensures economic sustainability, one, but also allows flexibility in adapting to change. And I think that's what's important to keep in mind here is how do you provide for success in the future when things are going to change. They've changed since the founding of Prairie Stone. They will continue to do so. So how do we get in there in a plan that works a year from now, 5 years from now, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road and still hits these big goals of the village. So just really quick, and what's really important is what we're looking at the area. The core of this, the focus of this is what we've called, it's Prairie Stone, and it's in Poplar Creek Crossing. That we'll get into how we call it, what we call it in a little bit. But so essentially everything from Sutton to Beverly on the west. That's the kind of core area here. But we can't then ignore some of these big sites, and Plum Farms was being discussed a few minutes ago. So we have that site, we have an area to the east, Sutton Crossing, and then an area to the west. That's where Odessa's at and some larger uses there. We see those, we can't ignore these sites. They're part of this picture, right? These are areas of change currently or in the future. But for this process, it wasn't necessarily our goal to go in and start saying we think certain land uses belong or don't belong on those sites. What we're trying to focus on is this core area. And what's important to note is it's large, it's big, roughly 840 acres. That's just a little bit shy of the Loop, right? The Loop is roughly 1,000 acres. So in terms of scale, we were talking about a major, major land area. This map, I think, what we're calling land availability, real estate availability, I think is the key map to look at. And roughly translating it, we went out there and said, okay, what land today is primed for development, could go forward, is already being marketed, is available? Those are the bright orange sites. Not every inch of those will be built, will be developed, but if you're talking about gross areas, that's the land available. There's also a secondary network. There's land in yellow, which we call infill or secondary sites. These are properties that maybe are available for development, but they have a current use. For example, the Sears Center parking lot, just west of the center of the arena. We also think there's infill spaces. There's a lot of spaces you're seeing that you could call quote-unquote outlots. A good example of one of those sites is where they're building the hotel now on Cabela's property, right? Land that had one use, but if we're thinking about it from an economic standpoint, efficiency standpoint, and some additional kind of land use planning goals, what might be available. And then, of course, within buildings. So what's important to note is you have over 500,000 square feet of directly available real estate space or floor space within some of these buildings. Quick caveat that's a snapshot from January, so some of these might change, but about half of that space, so roughly 250,000 square feet or more, is available is what we understand to be listed right now available within Sears campus alone. So we're talking about major areas. In some cases, they're small pieces of buildings. To the east side there's a handful of buildings that are completely vacant or have vacancies. This isn't sublet. This isn't things that might turn over. This is space that you could go in and put a lease on, in theory, tomorrow if you wanted to. So what's important about this, and I think the key theme from this slide and this analysis is Prairie Stone Business Park, this idea of this area as a business park. What's important now is roughly half, when you take out things like the wetlands, utility area, right-of-way, you take out some of the land that's being occupied for drainage from Pulte's operations on the far west side. 50% of the land that's available for development, that was intended for development when Prairie Stone was founded, has yet to be developed on. So what we see that is that the story of what this area, part of the community is not something that's, we wrote it and we're waiting to see what happens and what happens next. The story of this space and in the village as well is not even halfway through the story being told. So I think that's important in our minds going through it. The other quick hit on that is land use, right? What's out there in terms of gross coverage? So again, business park, you think Prairie Stone Business Park, 35% is that use right now. And that's even less if you take out, again, some of these large areas of the mining. So same thing, the 5990 Entertainment District. All of those uses combined are 10%. So in terms of space available, what could change, what can happen out there, we think that this is part of it, that there's a lot of opportunity for growth, for change, for thinking differently. So that's one of the opportunities. The downside of it, there's a lot of space to fill, so there's got to be thoughtful ways on how you do that and how you can do that sustainably in the future. Connectivity, I only bring it up really quickly. The 610 came up earlier. I think it's important to note there's a route through there now. PACE, it's something to be considered. PACE is in the process of kind of evolving their preferred model of service. So a lot of what we're seeing in some of these farther out suburbs, they're seeing service decline or change, and what their preference in these type of areas now tends to be direct service, really efficient, effective, fast, reliable service to limited destinations. So that poses a challenge if you have declining ridership and kind of this expansive route that's stopping everywhere. On the other side of it, they are all in on this I-90, as an agency, is all in on the I-90 express bus routes. We're seeing that near AT&T and in some of these other locations, Barrington Road. So there's an opportunity, I think, for greater connectivity as kind of a shifted model. And I bring it up as a side, but the Star Line, right, that was the right-of-way. And PACE representatives will remind you that they are operating now in what was initially planned to be the kind of Star Line route. Brands are important. You have a lot of excellent brands, well-known brands out there. What we found in general, talking to folks, looking around, was strong brands, not necessarily strong connectivity between place and what's out there, and there's a little bit of confusion. And one of the best known and probably most beloved is Poplar Creek. Great, but Poplar Creek isn't there. So it was an interesting thing that people kept saying, oh, it's where Poplar Creek was, and it wasn't there. So where that falls and pinpoints, I think, is important going forward. 5990, strong locational identification, but you're using that as part of the arena district that includes the Sears Center, and that's not on 59 or 90. So these are all kind of the components we were saying, how do we play with these? What do these turn into? What role do these brands have? And the important one, too, is Hoffman Estates, strong brand, and it's not necessarily shown directly there. So we think there's an opportunity for you to be better represented and put your flag on saying this is who we are in terms of future development that goes out there in the study area. Quick map just showing a lot of strong brands. Every one of the major retailers you could hope for, you have out there in an area that's being called, Poplar Creek Crossing Shopping Center. And I'm probably getting that wrong, but time only allows us to abbreviate it. And then I mentioned stakeholders earlier. This is an important part and what we heard. So some of the key takeaways. One, clarity of vision and intent. What does the village want to see happen out here? Now, this is part of the process. This is part of what we're doing and hoping to accomplish here. But we heard some frustrations between property owners who came in and said, we've been trying this and trying that, and we can't get an answer. Or saying, well, we have people who would like to come in and they want some kind of funding or some kind of subsidy, but we don't know if that's the intent or if we should pursue that. So I think not necessarily today, but the goal of this is to help the village staff and the board be able to really clearly understand what opportunities are out there, what are the goals of those opportunities, and what are the kind of key pieces that they want to plan for and to really target. Large and small opportunities. So small actions can have big outcomes. And the best example of this is the beer garden, right? A little temporary use, something that's programmed a little bit, and it's been wildly successful, and you're expanding the idea of it. Those are the kind of little things that can totally change people's thinking in terms of what this place is, that this is not a old model, this is a new model. This is the type of place that people want to live and work and be in. Another quick hit example we heard when talking to people who work at the local businesses, by the end of the session, they were asking us to help them organize their volleyball league. And it's like, okay, that we're laughing about that, and that's the point, is saying there's a need and want for connectivity, interconnectivity, synergy between people, their neighbors at businesses who maybe they live nearby each other and never knew it. What you see in these business parks and the places that are being built now, the places that are thriving as employment centers, is these abilities, these settings, spaces, whatever it might be, that people can interact. And that feeling of community is really kind of probably one of the most key trends happening right now. And it's happening in retail, office, it's happening in residential, it's happening everywhere. It's what people are looking for. They want to be able to connect. Urban vision, suburban context. So everyone knows a lot of the momentum is going towards Chicago, towards big cities, really dense urban areas for employment. So what's important is that this is not our pitch here, and findings are not to say you should be Chicago. How do we become dense in Chicago and have high rises everywhere? It's saying, what can we learn from them? What are the attractions? Why are people going there? And it's things like being walkable, mix of uses, amenities, events, ability to take transit. So it's flexibility. And so how can you take those ideas, those notions, and apply them here? Because what's important is that this is unique, and Prairie Stone is unique. And what we can say is, and I can say, having seen a lot of other major employment districts in the region, is you don't have very many of these with this really rich, beautiful, established landscape. The infrastructure you have out there is exceptional. So I think that's important to remember. What can you do? What ideas can you take and bring in and plug in Prairie Stone that builds on your greatest assets? And then location, location, location. As you always hear, everyone seemed to agree. We don't know the future of some of these big sites. We don't know what may happen with Sears or other employment in the future. In our more businesses want to kind of swing back to the suburbs. But I-90 corridor is desired, and it is valuable, and it is important, and people will be here. But on the backside of that is you have a lot of other centers along that corridor that are also competing with you. Even then, you're also close to the Cook County boundary. So then there's other incentives and tax and things like that you have to factor. So quick hit from the market. I won't get into this. I think some of this was provided already. The village is growing slightly, but getting much more diverse. Those are trends that aren't just unique for Hoffman Estates. This, I think, is really important too. And I think this is what we found, that we're not just talking about Prairie Stone, but what you have in opportunities to do in Prairie Stone can help, in our minds, to address other issues or changes or policies or ideas that need to be considered village-wide. So if you look at the breakdown demographically, huge segment of your population, 55 and older, okay? 25 to 34 is also growing, but small. So what's important here, and we'll connect this in just a second, is 40 years ago, if you look at take the kind of largest group in demographics you have right now, if you take that 40 years ago, that directly correlates with when your community grew, when the housing stock largely was built out. So what you see is skipping ahead here. What you see essentially is a housing stock and residential stock that was built for one group, and that group is aging. So is the current housing stock, residential foundation, is that appropriate as the large bulk of the community goes forward? Are there different housing options that may be necessary? It's no shock that employment numbers have taken a hit recently. What that correlates with is the northwest suburban market. It's starting to pick up a little bit last year, but you see in front of you these three major campuses alone account for a significant portion of that. Just the Prairie Stone and the AT&T campus alone are about a third of all of the job losses, vacancies in the northwest suburban submarket. So, that's a hit. There's no way around that. That's in every way part of the reality of what's out there now and what you have to be clear-eyed about. But it's starting to turn. We know AT&T's moving forward, Motorola campus. So the upside of this is there is some idea of what's working and where people are coming back to and what might work in the future.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you consider educational services? Because I noticed there's a dramatic drop in educational services.
That is an excellent question. I can loosely...
For education, probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
I didn't quite understand that.
Career ed?
Career education.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the private
okay.
company that moved to Schaumburg.
Okay.
I was going to say, I can guarantee it's probably one or two companies that changed and moved and that distorts it, and that's, I think, what's interesting about these numbers, too.
And the information, what does that relate to? The AT&T or something else?
Yeah.
Yes?
Suspect so.
Okay.
It's the only place, they don't have telecommunications, so it's got to be in the information.
Mayor, you had a question?
Yeah, how do you see the Somerset Lakewood property? How does that interplay with the Prairie Stone property?
Sure. That's a great question, and we don't know the results of that yet. I think it's got a lot going for it in terms of idea. They hit on all these topics that we'll explore a little bit further too. What's interesting to us is that in itself, at least to me, is also very different than what you have out in Sears Center. So I think what's important here is that the solution that can't necessarily be to say we have 250,000 or so square feet of Class A office in Sears property that's not being used or as well utilized as could. Let's take that same model and move it over. I think what's different about Prairie Stone is that it's more of a campus. It's a little more external. So I think that's a little different. But I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with AT&T, with that property changing over with Bellworks. What types of firms are attracted there versus what firms don't want to be there. And so maybe that's part of the approach is to say we know what the market wants, the approach is for that property. How can we be different? How can we cast a wider net and have something for everybody? So just key takeaways, high vacancy rates, has been negative absorption, starting to turn around a little bit, which is excellent. What we had thought, or in the market experts we worked with from Goodwin Williams Group thought, was smaller specialty firms that want to be in this area, some that are moving up, some maybe that are moving out, they want cheaper, some that are moving, say, from areas west of here, that want a more prominent location. You have the ability to kind of attract both of those. But most importantly, and this is kind of what it comes back to, is that the model of suburban office parks and campuses is changing. And we have it playing out right in front of us, we're right across the street, right over here with AT&T. But other examples are Oak Brook. McDonald's campus is now being planned as a mixed use, you'll hear that a lot, mixed use, active, vital lifestyle district. Still has employment uses there, but the backfilling in the uses, and then of course AT&T Motorola campus, which is moving forward now. It's a very similar idea, similar mix, bringing people there, bringing attractions, and trying to make those employment uses that are still there, or may come back there, more interested because of the other amenities. Retail, I'm going to skip through a little bit of this. You have a lot of retail out there, and what we found was that there is a large supply of shopping centers and big box retailers in this market now. You have good bones, right? You have good vehicular access, visibility, that kind of thing, that with more business, with more people, that there may be additional uses, future restaurants, neighborhood serving retail, smaller scale. What we heard also, though, was retail follows rooftops. That's the old adage, what we know that. And I'm going to go back now one step, because we went back to look at grocery stores, because that was a lot of ways thinking, okay, what's missing, what can we get? And even that, what we found was within the 3-mile radius or less, there's not that many out there. However, within the market overall, in the market area, there's a lot of competition, both at the high level, big national chains, and even small ethnic chains, things like that you're seeing thriving in some other locations. All of it's there.
Just out of curiosity, what are the numbers that grocery stores want?
So, exactly. So, even a Aldi, 22,000 square foot Aldi, small market, roughly speaking, they are looking for 25,000 residents in a close-in trade area. Okay, they want 25,000 people that they can count on in their general area. And if we were trying to say, let's build that demand and get our own grocery store and reach out to Aldi, that would equate to roughly 9,000 units.
9,000 more?
New units, right, 9,000 units within that market area. So, I don't, I can't tell you offhand how wide they'd cast that net, but let's just say you put it right in the middle here, within 2 or 3 mile drive, they're gonna wanna see roughly 9,000 units. So that's for an Aldi, right? So that's for certain dynamics. Could other locations move and reconsolidate or relocate? It might be an option. But it gives you a sense for what the volume needed. We're really talking about big numbers. We're not out here to say you're gonna bring 9,000, 10,000 units to Prairie Stone. That's not what we're doing today. But it gives you a sense for what needs to be done to make this more attractive for that. And we spoke with, our market consultant spoke with someone that they knew who does a lot of work in the grocery store segment, and we looked at the sites, and they said, yeah, actually, I'd rather be north. I'd actually rather be near the Arboretum, maybe, because perceived access, visibility, things like that. So there's going to be small nuances to what makes you attractive and larger factors as well. And then the big one, we kind of did a quick pass on housing the first time to kind of study it, and then went back and said we need to explore this more because we think there's some opportunities related to that. That's the one missing ingredient really right now that's out there. This slide here I think is important. So what types of housing you have and what you don't have, and then when was it built, right? 70% of your renter units, which is only a small fraction overall in the community, 70% is in units, buildings with 20 or fewer units. So we bring that up because what you're seeing built nowadays, the best examples we have of development we're seeing happen in the suburbs and in the area are larger scale developments, usually over 100 or 150 units, and they've got great amenities. These are the kind of things that are attractive right now to the population groups that we think could be interested in this, we could address with this area. So in kind of future planning. So that is not represented. You have some multifamily, it's limited, it's all pretty dated. There's new things being built, but townhomes, things like that. So we think that there's an opportunity for a little bit greater range of housing options and flexibility that could be out there as you go forward. And I mentioned this, the 40 years ago when everyone was coming to town, 70% of your housing stock was built between 1960 and 1990. So there's a track there. And are those residents able to live in their houses now? Is there vacancy, or is there kind of a way to adapt in the future for what they may want in the years ahead? I'm jumping ahead here for time. So what you've seen, like I was just getting to, is a lot of these garden-style apartments, 3 stories are roughly townhome developments, where you had blocks of townhomes, and they're kind of more suburban in nature, right? They have usually direct load garages, things like that. You are seeing some new ones. The North 680 in Schaumburg is a great example of one of these new developments that's coming in. A lot of amenities is kind of what's happening now. So the strengths you have lead to saying that there could be demand. You have a need for it going forward. You don't have the product, but there is interest in these types of products out there. And so what we did is we went back and this is the last I'll cover on the kind of the market side, but what types of housing could be out there? What products might be out there that would plug in well, that would work both well for the type of place that Prairie Stone is, and also then for the community, for the groups in place, the demographics and all that. And so it's two big things. Downsizing options for older residents, and a wider range of unit types to get younger people, young working singles, couples, and young families with children. What's important about this is we don't see the solution necessarily saying we need to grow, have all of Prairie Stone be a family neighborhood. What we think is part of this is the solution is how do you get people to come out here, to stay out here as employees, and then decide to live here in the housing stock, the single family stock you have. So part of it is attracting people of different range. And going back for a second on some of the stakeholder themes we heard is one is a lot of the companies out here they're doing fine attracting people right out of school, but they're having trouble getting people to stay with 3 years, 5 years of experience. Because what they're finding is those people, once they have a few years, they got a little more choice. It's a very tight labor market right now. They're saying, I'm getting ready to settle down. I have some options. Maybe I'm going to look for a different company that's closer to my home. Or somewhere I don't have to drive as far from the city. Maybe they're not quite ready to leave the city, but or buy, right? But they don't have those options available. And so we heard a lot of representatives of business say, we just our employees don't really have good options nearby. They want to be here, but they can't, and so they're leaving after a few years when they can. So 4 major types, we think. Entry-level for sale courtyard townhomes. These are more urban product. We say that is the kind you would load off an alley, right? So very urban frontage. Move up for sale townhomes. So a little bit larger units, a little bit nicer units. Rental townhomes, I think could have some potential out here. Again, you're building essentially this very similar unit as a townhome, as a for sale townhome, but it's just which group are you trying to attract in terms of price point or ability to finance, things like that. And then contemporary rental apartments. And this gets into that larger format style, amenities, high-end finishes, greater density. And we've seen a lot of success with those products and in the communities we're working with all over the Chicago region, metropolitan region. And it's not just young people. It's not just young kids who want to be in urban settings. You're seeing a lot of empty nesters prefer these options, even TOD options, for the flexibility it allows. So jumping into kind of where we're at today, what we're focusing on is the future land use framework. And what we look at this is taking market findings, design thoughts, policies, ideas, and how do you kind of bring them together in kind of some broad strokes in land use patterns, development patterns that provide a kind of a direction, help you to make choices and evaluate choices, but don't necessarily say, okay, you have to use X many units in this location or X square feet of office here, and over here has to be a different use entirely. So how do you build in a little bit of flexibility in that way? So what we did is first said, what's the existing framework in our minds? And we defined it, Prairie Stone, and it's a little bit differently. You kind of have a core area centered around the current Village Green. You have what we think of as Prairie Stone West, or a different part of that, where you have some of the supporting uses, the uses that daycares and schools and things like that. Sears Campus right now is Sears Campus. Trillium kind of defines their edge, but there's a lot of vacant land available there for development. You have the Arena District, and then on the east side, what's still being called Prairie Stone, but on the east side of the tracks, I think is an opportunity to call that a different use, different area entirely. Poplar Creek, Plum Farm, Sutton Crossing. So moving from what's out there today, the first concept would kind of try to theoretically introduce kind of a wider mix of uses in all of these areas. Big theme being, let's call it 2 areas. Prairie Stone is west of the tracks. On the east side of the tracks is Poplar Creek. Okay. If you look at them in those, the areas, the amount of space available starts to come down a little bit. It starts to be a little bit more understandable, achievable. And then you'll also see that you actually end up with 2 areas that are both pretty solid in terms of mix of uses. So on their own, if they were planned independently and targeted independently with their own policies, whatever it might be, that they each kind of provide a little bit of more clarity and understanding of what could be done, how things could be built out, phased in the future. So big things for Framework 1. And what we've kind of begun to call this is the preferred option. Doesn't mean it has to be like that, but this is kind of the way we see it happening going forward. It's kind of the preferred. But the second concept we developed, we think, can be interchanged in certain pieces. So it's not all option one or option 2. And I think that's important. So key strokes of Framework 1 is residential growth throughout the entire area. We think that's the use that could be plugged in. You can cover a wide range of uses, of unit types, product types, things like that. And at the same time, you can also try to grow through infill of your commercial and your office uses. So it's less a priority on attracting more and more, single tenants that are going to build a new building for their campus and relocate, or that is going to get built on spec, and you're going to then try to find people. What we see is saying you have big sites available, look for a different range of uses that can complement, make that office more attractive, and then infill, because you also have a lot of office space sites available still within this concept. One option we explored, and this is not detailed in any way, we just looked at, said how could you kind of work in reuse ideas for some of the Sears sites, properties. So maybe there's opportunities to bring in campus-style housing on some of their site. So again, total range, in terms of from everything from urban townhomes up to kind of a planned development area. That's just one option. And then identifying where you kind of have a transition of density. So if you were exploring the west side of Prairie Stone as residential, what we like about that is you have a large bulk of land, say 70 acres or so, that could be done and doesn't have to be all super dense town, multifamily apartments. It could be denser townhomes, things like that. I don't know if single family is probably the best use here, only because you are trying to get a certain level of return on the area, and trying to find those right types of units that lend themselves well to what the business community needs, what retailers needs, things like that. So if you could just imagine, if you're looking at this west side area, and I think you have it in front of you.
No, we don't have these sheets.
Is it on the screen here?
No.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. So on, here we go. So basically what we see here is maybe you could say, okay, let's bring in a little bit lower, mid-density types of units and maybe create a new neighborhood, okay, on this side. And then as you work down towards the south, it starts to get a little denser. And what we see then, and Kevin will elaborate this in a minute, is what we're saying is the Arena District just south of the Village Green. We think that's an opportunity to really do your kind of marquee, denser, active, entertainment-oriented district, and we think that upper story residential, hotel, office, all of those could be part of that mix. And in the great developments you see happening of that nature, they have a mix of those flavors scattered throughout. Just quick hit on character. Some of the ideas we see, and you see kind of a range of that happening. Really quick, going back on the west side, we think there's opportunities. You have land just west of Beverly. Can some of that be potentially used or brought in for recreational uses? So right now you say, when people we spoke to, we said, what about residential out there? We talked to people in the development community, and right away they go, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. That's half industrial and half business park. But you start to say, well, what if there was a school? What if there was play fields? What if you were really close to where you worked? What would you say then? And people start to say, okay, maybe there's a different way of thinking about this. On the east side, what we're calling Poplar Creek, there in concept one, it's not necessarily changing any of the prevailing uses around, it's just backfilling. We think, again, residential development, maybe this could be a site for a school. And we bring that up because what we've heard and what we know is one of the challenges with Plum Farms, with the area in general, with school districts is, and we spoke with representatives of District 300, and they flat out said, we're not anti-development. But they have a problem, and it's that the closest elementary school is 4 miles away. So they have a geography issue. And I think that's important, and it's important if you were to go after residential in these areas, they're gonna, people with kids like myself are going to say, well, yeah, but I don't want to be 4 miles from the school, I want to be in my community. So if you were to be able to find that, and what you have here is land and proximity to uses and things like that. So if you were to look for some of these assets you could bring in, and that all of a sudden they really change the calculus on how attractive this could be to residential, to a wider mix of uses, to people who work in Sears and don't want to drive, 10 miles to drop their kid off at school in their community. They maybe want to be closer to where they work. So we think there's opportunity for that. We think there's some space there. This concept, maybe the hotel stays in place. You kind of backfill some of the office uses. What's important to note in these locations here, these seem to be where there's more office vacancy in each of the buildings. So it's not just all in one building.
We got an update, though. One of them, the Sutter building's now filled.
Now filled, okay. And that one specifically kind of, beautiful. We couldn't help but use that in some of our other imagery. Mm-hmm. So on the north side, too. Now, one thought might be reuse. We don't know if that works, we don't know if it's available, if it could happen, but when you start thinking that way, there's an awful lot of sites that could make sense for either a school or kind of a different approach without having to scrap the whole building or the site, and what's important about that is it lowers the bar for development. So it's just another ways of how do you make this area more attractive, more economical. And then the other part of this is just how do you have a lot going on. I think there is vacancy there, but in the Poplar Creek Shopping Center, there's a lot of great stores. You kind of have every major brand and label you'd want as a young family or something like that right there. So how can you take that right now is a one-sided development facing east? Can you have better connectivity? You bring in residential and then connectivity with Plum Farms, say, to the north. So now we're talking about a neighborhood in this area, not just a scattering of different developments. Concept 2. Big changes. What if you said, nope, residential doesn't work on the west side, the village says that, the market says that. we want to really hone in on employment uses. Maybe we want to go after another big employer. What we had heard a little bit in the beginning of this process was that some bigger, maybe production uses, things like that, would love to come in. They couldn't find a big enough site. So maybe one of the options, you had 70 acres or so west of Sears. Okay, look for some kind of facility production, light production, distribution, things that maybe you didn't want to think about before, but in the scheme of things, you say, okay, we can find ways to fit that and make that work. Because the value is, what about companies that don't want to develop? They're looking at a lot of different sites. What you have to offer right now is excellent Class A nearby. So you can imagine a company coming in, being able to develop a facility on the land that's available, and then take over space in Sears or in one of the nearby businesses there, other buildings. And again, you're lowering that cost, you're making your sites more competitive within the marketplace. So Framework 2 says, okay, what if you were to find some kind of use like that and bring that in, transitioning down from there, backfilling in, really focusing on the core area of Prairie Stone being the Village Green. So really focusing, pursuing that, however it might be, incentivizing it, that to get, when people are coming to look at the area for new offices, to build a new building, you're saying, no, we really want you to be in this area between Prairie Stone Parkway and Trillium. That's really want to focus on this kind of critical mass of energy and people. And then, again, south of there, Arena District, what we know, you have Spring Awakening, which is great, coming. What if there's a future for that, an extended future for that, in these larger entertainment uses or events south? Okay, how do you create space? So we think if you were to pursue that in the future, you could build out the rest of the site, maybe bring in mixed uses on either end of Prairie Stone Parkway, to kind of fill in with maybe some residential. It'd be more of a focus on entertainment-oriented commercial. So restaurants and bars and small venues, things like that, and really kind of going all in on that idea. And then infill along Prairie Stone Parkway. Again, maybe it's single story, single use, and it's just kind of all a little bit tighter, more walkable fabric. Maybe there's a chance to go a couple stories up and do things like you see in like the Glen, for example, where you have that little bit of both happening in kind of the same proximity. Then the big change on this one be, what if you said, okay, we are going to really go all in on residential on the east side, and say, let's transition there and refocus residential there, and the goal then is to really create something that works on north and south of 72. You have residential, and that's where you bring the school, that's where you bring ideas, and over time, maybe some of those businesses and those sites transition. Maybe, the Marriott's there, maybe in the future there's a new hotel development on the west side, and you say, we want compatibility between Sears Center Arena and a hotel right there. We know that's something that would be really attractive to certain groups who may consider a Sears Center Arena for events in the future. So it's less emphasis on office, and that being an office park on Poplar Creek, and now more of a residential area that's kind of defined by Poplar Creek and Plum Farms. And you can see a little bit of character here. Really quick too, you have all this amazing open space, naturalized areas, so can that be integrated with the development? The problem you have out right there now, quite frankly, is you have a lot of really great uses. They're all their own little islands. And if you look at the map, you can see that. So how do you bring these things together, start stitching them together? And here, I'll stop talking for a minute, and I'll let Kevin jump in.
He's going to let me jump in here. And what Mike's talking about, to me, is about creating a place in the heart. You have a place, and he touched upon this, there's infrastructure, and there's kind of this natural landscape and beauty that's really unique in the business park world. And when you start to think about other land uses and places that are successful that have a mix of uses, how can they're usually centered around something. There's usually a focus. There's a place where the community comes together, where the people come together, whether it's office workers, residents, people that are working or visiting or coming to an entertainment. You guys have the Village Green. It's already established, and there's something there. Now, at the very beginning, when we talked to village staff, they really challenged us. They said, well, show us how to get more out of this. There's been some success there, and it started really small. How do we take that to the next level? Maybe start thinking about it more as a year-round thing, more as changing the infrastructure a little bit so that it can be programmed year-round. So we started to think about that. And, if you look at the picture here on the upper right, that's from the Sears Center, and you're really close. You have this kind of great view, and the boulevard's coming together. So how do we think about that a little differently? So we did a concept for this, and we should say we had an open house at Sears Center, and we showed these ideas. We showed images, we showed the concept, this hand-drawn concept, and just ideas for how we could make that something more than what it is. And part of that was, how do you create more of a formalized event place to happen? And what we're showing here, some of the things that we're showing are expanding. Here's the existing concessions, expanding that beer garden area into more of a permanent thing. Maybe there's a stage area, and we show a formalized lawn, bringing people from across the street to this. You have parking, you have a place for people to get, and we know you have events where people are parking. You're going to let people park along this Prairie Stone Parkway, and they were doing it. So how can we maybe even have that here, is what we're kind of showing in that brown area there, to allow the parking to happen and be proximate so that you can come into a gateway right here into this space. And all we're showing is a simple band shell, the idea that you can build upon your infrastructure with a simple walkway that comes up. Maybe there's a place that makes it more friendly for families, a splash pad or a water feature, something that's interactive and interesting. So all of those things kind of coming together, so it's multi-generational and brings and attracts people for multiple seasons. And we have some imagery here that we showed at the open house. Got a lot of feedback. We had a survey online to get feedback on these elements as well. But just showing some character of what we're talking about, and some of them are what you guys have, but expanding on that. Some of the stuff that we saw, we go to different places like Rock Island, Illinois, and they have this really simple lawn, a band shell, good, cool setting, and that's really attractive to people. And you see how that's bringing the community together. So just building upon some of those ideas and showing the flavor of how it can work for not just if visitors or those events that you're having, but the people that work here, the office population, and being able to bring them into places where they can gather and collaborate outside, spaces for them to come together. Maybe there's yoga, maybe there's other things that are happening, and it's a really flexible space. So the idea of creating an arena district with the Village Green as the center, the Village Green could be the key asset that helps to attract new development on nearby parcels, because you're creating a place here, right? So active ground floor commercial uses could complement the Sears Center experience. And then bringing upper story residential office or hotel uses like Mike was talking about, really activate it during non-peak hours. So not just the office day, but other times of the year and night. And then there's if we could do shared parking, that helps between the Sears Center and any new development, that would really help ensure that that the parking supply is adequate and that it's efficient. So we're not just building parking lots to build parking lots, we're using the space we have to do that in a way that's complementary. And so this is kind of a bird's eye image of the existing conditions, looking at the Sears Center and the parking lot for the Sears Center right now over the Village Green, and just an image of what that can be and what that vision could be. And part of this is to give staff something to take to ICSC and get people excited about the Hoffman Estates and having a place there, right? And we're implying, the buildings next to the Sears Center, mixed-use buildings, we're implying that there's frontage there and that they're together, and that's that critical mass that Mike was talking about, that front, the space and the event lawn and this new band shell that you guys have, and the expanded beer garden with the water feature and those things that create a place and a community gathering. Just a couple of images before and after to kind of show that in plan view of how that could. The frontage along Prairie Stone we think is important, and really closing the gap, because right now surface parking could be transferred to the back portion, and then you front Prairie Stone with buildings. With that.
Yeah, jump back in. So part of the research we did for this was looking at places like Sears Center and how they work and what kind of environments are they in. What's interesting really quick about Sears Center is it's actually unique for a venue of its size, and that's what we were surprised to find. Venues of the size of Sears Center, the types of events that it has, they tend to fall either in cities, kind of mid-size, community cities, say in the Midwest, or really completely separate. So what you have right now is not quite either of those, right? So I think that's important, is to look at what opportunities are there. And some places where we've seen those, in a good one, community we work a lot in the past is Moline. And Moline Center Arena, when they needed more parking, they worked with the city, and they said, because in the arena in Moline is right on the river, right on the edge of downtown. It's separated by tracks, by a big bridge. So there's kind of some connectivity issues. And I bring it up though because one of the solutions they had there was they said, we'll help you with more parking, but part of the solution is it can't all be convenient. You have to park. Some of your people have to walk through our downtown, walk through the 3 blocks where our brewery is. And then that's our way of keeping some of these folks and stimulating businesses. And that's been really successful there. It's really helped a lot. So when we show you this plan, and part of the idea is we're not touching a single drop of space, right? Sears Center Arena needs to have the parking they need to function and be successful in the future. But how do you create that environment that brings people in, that lets people come early or stay and contribute? And it's not just nights when they have programming that the city's benefiting from it, that the village is benefiting from it, but every day of the year, basically all day long, there's people there, there's activity. So we're just going to wrap up quick. As we finish the existing conditions, kind of initial findings and moving in, what we kind of came back to was, we thought some important questions that needed to be answered. So originally these questions kind of were up front. I think they're a good way to summarize because we've kind of started to, we think, identify the answers for some of these, but we think these are really big and important questions for, on the other side of the table here moving forward. One, how do you improve Prairie Stone's competitiveness as an employment center? That should be number one here right now. What are the types of employment districts? What's being successful happening out there now? It is a mix of uses. That's what you see everywhere that's happening. It's greater synergy between businesses, employments, and opportunities like that, and it's also greater mix of uses, more dynamic spaces. So you need to be able to accommodate also diversity in the growth cycle. You don't want to just be able to say, we're going to bring out businesses or employers of certain kind, certain size. You want to accommodate every range of that growth. So that includes companies that are going to want more urban. They're going to want to be mixed in and thrown in, and that goes back to this point up front about what's the relationship of Bellworks versus Sears Center, right? I would consider that more of it's a hive of activity. They're all kind of mixed together, so there's going to be some need and desire for that. But then you're going to want firms that want to have their own property. They want to have their own space to build out and evolve on their own property. And then you're going to have tenants like Sears, hopefully a couple big anchor tenants that provide really a real volume of employment. Major attractions, amenities. Okay, so it's an entertainment district, arena district. These are your big uses, as Kevin was just identifying. These are kind of the key things you already have in place. And what's interesting about this is if you were to say in any of these other communities and other of these business parks in the region of the country, and they're developing their own plans for how do they transition, and all of them are saying, we need entertainment uses. So you have that. You guys have these amenities, natural areas, an attractive landscape, settings, things like that. You already have all these amazing assets that everyone's looking to accomplish and get and find and figure out how they make them work, right? And you have those in place. It's how do you tie them all together? So it's expanding on what's popular out there now, leveraging the Village Green as a business amenity for both village residents in Prairie Stone or outside of Prairie Stone, but also businesses, and supporting the Sears Center experience. And then we went to big ideas. And this goes back to that, we said little ideas, little things relate to big ideas. So what major changes could occur in the future, and what needs to be required to enable this change? That goes on one end of the pendulum is, okay, if you want Spring Awakening and these big, events, and you're bringing, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 people to the community, our space is there for that. Is that what we want to happen in the future moving forward in this area? Okay, what do we need to make that happen to allow that? On the other side, do we want to create a more dynamic 24/7, 365 days a year environment? So a place where people can live and work and play. What needs to be happening for that? School is probably the first on the list of that. So one theme we kept coming back to when talking about branding is, what if your approach here and your selling point was Prairie Stone could become the country's most livable office park, okay? The place with the greatest quality of life in the Chicago metropolitan region. It's not a stretch, if you think about it. If you were to say, hey, we're going to have the newest, nicest, newest school in the northwest suburbs, and it's going to be a 5-minute walk from our major employment, one of our major employment districts, that is a strong selling point. It doesn't matter what companies are out there, where you are. You know, you think Hoffman Estates, separate in the city, how are we going to deal with commuting and all that? Well, what if your solution is actually it's local? That's a great way to get people interested in your community and growing and moving forward, is saying we have the opportunity to have young families, young professionals be out here and see that they can evolve and they can live here and they can have a life here. And they're not just, getting to a certain point in their life and they're transferring out and they're saying, okay, now it's time to buy a house. So there's that opportunity for that. Opportunities to attract other major employers. That's kind of why we're exploring, what if you had some other employment use, distribution or light manufacturing. I don't know what the answer is to that. We're not here to say it should be one or the other, but what could be out there to fill space. Long-term potential for other major entertainment uses, again, we covered that a little bit. And what we also went back to do a little bit of research on when we heard about Spring Awakening was, how do residential and big, noisy, crowded spaces, do they work together? And not everybody is going to want to be near that. Certain levels and thresholds will be a problem. But there is evidence, and there's places where this works. You can go all the way up from Lollapalooza happening in Grant Park with some pretty expensive residential units happening, and there's a population boom just happening in downtown Chicago right now, and those are going there because of the noise and the activity. All the way up down the line to, say, things like Ravinia, neighborhood festivals and events, things like that. So we think that it's not necessarily they're not compatible, it's kind of how you plan them, how you set them, and then who you're trying to attract. If you're trying to create a neighborhood, young people, young families, yeah, you're not going to put your major festival grounds right there. I would argue Ravinia does achieve that a little bit, but maybe that's locating down south near the arena, mixing in uses, and people who are moving there, who might live there, they want that. They want that activity, that energy, that presence, and they're moving there for that. And then finally, I think important in all this is transit. That's the missing piece, and we didn't hit a lot today, but how can that relate? What makes that work? And this goes back to this most livable. And one of the models that someone presented and mentioned to us at stakeholder meetings was, what if there's a strong selling point is that you're not going to be a no-car household, okay? What if it is a one-car household? Is that possible? And we started to think, well, what would that mean? What does that look like? Well, it's not hard to think that if you had great express service to Rosemont on the Pace, which you have now, if you had great service there, that, a young family, okay, working professionals, one person could work in the district, maybe one person works downtown, and, they're dropping off, their kids go to school or daycare 5 minutes away, they can walk or bike, one of them can't. So it's just about creating this flexibility and setting the stage for these opportunities. And it's not a stretch when you start to think about what you need to do to make it. It's about saying right now, okay, what steps need to be taken to get there. So with that, I'll leave it open to questions. I know there was an interest in having some thought and discussion about kind of thoughts on what we presented, questions about it, where we'd like to go with this. Kevin briefly mentioned it, but you have ICSC coming up next month. And I know that part of this is to come back, and it goes back to what does Village want. So part of that is saying, what are we really trying to sell as the asset when we go out there, when staff goes out there next month.
Are there any questions up here from the board right now? Are you all overwhelmed?
Yeah, sorry, I know. That's always a challenge, like, look, let's take it all, and we'll throw in some technical difficulties in the mix.
Could you make copies of those other pages that we don't have that you were, I think, was it 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, 3, 4.
3, 4, 5?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. It certainly was thorough. Peter, do you have anything to add?
No, I think this is very helpful. We will distribute the rest of the section so you can digest it further, and I guess if it's appropriate, if you want to schedule follow-up discussion at some point, we can do that. We purposely, when we went into this study and you retained Lakota, we weren't looking for, obviously, a plan that was going to be built, and this is the final answer. We were looking to stimulate ideas and understand better the potential of the business park area and what it could be, and look at, kind of give you a chance to envision what it could be with real data, with professionals who have experiences elsewhere, with actual market support to back it up. And I think that's a lot of what we were trying to accomplish here. So if there are any thoughts or comments about things, again, this is something that our economic development team and those of you who attend the ICSC conference, being able to start to show these representations to developers, maybe developers who do mixed-use developments and who might be interested in a piece of this puzzle, and see if there actually could be interest. So I think we're kind of looking for feedback on that level too, if it's desirable.
Trustee Mills.
You keep talking about trying to entice the people to come out here. In this day and age, we're seeing so many of the companies doing the opposite and going into Chicago. For a while there, they were coming out to the suburbs. Now it's back to that. What's the biggest emphasis we would have to do to really pull them back out here? Is it the residential with amenities?
Yeah, there's probably not one good answer, and things I've been seeing lately are saying, oh, now is the time, the pendulum's going to swing back to the suburbs. And you're starting to see that because people are, millennials and people my age are having families and they're tired of being stuck in too small a unit in the city. So I think it will balance back, and I think you have, projects like Bellworks going forward, which are exciting. What's been successful, though, and we can say this pretty objectively, is the places that have the mix of uses. They have that urban flavor, the ingredients mix, not necessarily their big, dense skyscrapers, those type of districts. But they have that mix of uses. They have that critical mass that you can do things. You don't have to get in your car to do every shopping. So I think, going back to it really quickly, is, what would bring them and would they be coming back? It's the places that have gotten this kind of magic mix right. These place-based places. Place-based, that sounds ridiculous. But, so, I don't know if, the solution is to say, well, we're going to compete with downtown. We're going to compete with Chicago. It's there's an awful lot of people who are still here. And I-90, people still want to be on that corridor. So it's how do you make your sites more competitive than other sites in I-90 or to the south, if people who are exploring other corridors. It's what can you offer in terms of lifestyle that, say, Rosemont can't, Schaumburg can't.
That'd be really rough, yeah. Yeah. And it's, I know no one has a crystal ball, but you try to imagine, do you do the residential first to attract the businesses? Do you do the businesses first to attract? It's
both.
Impossible to figure it out.
So Linda Goodman and her team from, they did the market component, and we have that exact conversation probably once a week, and her answer is always yes, right? But this is why we spent probably too much time talking about some of the demographics of your community, because I think that's what's really important here, is you have built in right now, in the patterns, in the demographic patterns, a large volume of households that in the foreseeable future will be exploring other options, will maybe want other options. And what we're seeing more of those folks on both ends, right, of the spectrum, are interested in these more dynamic, maybe interested in smaller, where they don't have to shovel or clean up, take care of the whole property. So these spaces, and actually we were just talking on the way up here, some developers we've spoken to in different projects in the suburbs for transit, really true TOD planning, transit-oriented development planning. He said, why do we keep talking about young professionals? It's the retirees, the empty nesters who are loving our units, because they get really great amenities. They don't need both cars, or maybe they have two, but they don't need to use them every day, and they can take the train in once or twice a week to go see shows or do something downtown or see their kids. So it's kind of interesting to see how it's happening on both sides. But it goes to setting the table, these interesting places that make people and companies want to be here, because if the choice is between going to work or starting a company in a place where you're going there, you're driving there at 8:39, and you're leaving at 5, and there's really not much else, that gets tiring, that gets old. If you have something where you want to be there, you can't wait to get off the bus or get off the highway because you're home, you're in a community, I think that's, really where the way forward might be.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Jim?
I know staff was interested on whether or not there's feedback on some of these graphics potentially used at the ICSC, but in all honesty, I didn't see parts 3, 4, and 5 either until
Yeah.
tonight. And I think, with all due respect to staff, it's a little bit unfair to ask for that type of feedback when you just first received it. So I don't know that we need to have it for ICSC, frankly. It would be nice. I think the better utility is to consider refine the concepts and have multiple concepts available, because as we get into the comp plan, the whole goal was to have these as attachments and be illustrative and not necessarily adopted, like like we, the village, has a preferred plan. You heard Peter say that. So if you do have individual input and you want to share it, items you think are really good or things that you have some major concern about, please let us know, and we'll start compiling those as we go, and we will potentially put it on a future agenda to gain more feedback a month from now or maybe 2 months from now. But I think there's potentially better utility to look at it as part of the comp plan again. That's just my thoughts.
Yes, Trustee Mills.
Well, the whole thing with ICSC is, it's not a residential conference, and a lot of this is a lot of residential components.
One of the things we've been seeing more the last 3 or 4 years is builder developers that are retail/mixed use.
That's true.
Cordish and a bunch of them that we've been meeting with, they talk about, residential above some type of retail or something else and higher densities. And we really haven't had the ability to respond to that. And I think that's still okay. But now when they come talk to us, if they come talk to us this year, we have greater context. We can bring this study where it is draft form, have it with us, say, well, would something like this be of interest, if that's what the participants from the board choose to do while we're there. I'm just, there's a lot of ability to move around the concepts. It's on parcels.
Well, I think the thing is we're not the ones that are going to be building it. It's the developers that would be doing it. To show that we're open to these things would be one thing.
You're absolutely correct. So, certain big concepts, like, for the longest time, the idea of any type of housing in Prairie Stone was verboten.
Yep.
Well, at some point in time, staff is going to have to hear from this committee or the board whether or not there is more of an opportunity for that, if it's the right type of housing, whatever that is. Because of right now, we are still holding those, and there's, as you know, there's several that are actively courting sites out there right now. So at some point, that would be, or we can have them go through the process that we've always had, which is courtesy review and see what they're wanting to do and those type of things.
And I'll just really quick to interject, add, our apologies if we focus too much on residential. That's a new piece. That's why we're floating this out there. But one of the challenges for the business in making the offices and the buildings you have and new ones is that there's, cafes and coffee shops and things like that. There's not a lot out there. There's not a lot of choices within the park. You have a lot of opportunities in Poplar Creek, but you have to get on that road, and it's 5-minute drive, 10-minute drive, and that's not everyone is looking for that. What we heard was that, a cafe went in and then it couldn't be sustained, and that's when things were doing pretty well. So that's why it just goes back to how much space. So even at its heyday of this park, at peak employment, you probably didn't even have the critical mass to have these ancillary, supportive, exciting uses in the bars and restaurants and cafes and little grocers, whatever it might be. You weren't even at that level of critical mass to get there. So it's not just saying, well, can we go to get back to peak employment? That's only 50% of the story, right? So that's where we're focusing. What else is out there?
Well, we've always heard you got to count the rooftops. I mean, that's from day one when we've gone to ICSC, they always say that to us. So, I appreciate that part of it that you're showing us too.
I mean, we've been hearing that since 1988 when I got involved with the Plan Commission, so.
And you built a lot of rooftops in the 80s. I mean, you built a lot.
Thank you.
Can I have just one last kind of comment on the goals here? I think Trustee Mills, your points are really well taken, because what we've always been faced with, whether it be at ICSC or just someone walking in the door, is someone wants to build an apartment development, and we get they bring their site in with their blinders on about their site and their one project. And for staff or for you to evaluate that in a vacuum by itself, we've talked about residential in Prairie Stone, but you can't really evaluate that kind of a project, that kind of a watershed change in direction on one parcel basis. So that was really, I think you touched on this, the goal of this study was really to give you a leg up on when we see an individual piece come in, you now have a conceptual picture of how it might fit into a big picture. At least you can now intelligently look at a plan for one property and think, okay, I can now visualize how this might fit in, or how maybe this isn't the right, if someone comes in with a 10,000 lot, single family detached home plan next to Sears, you may look and say that, it's residential, but maybe that isn't the right kind. I mean, we wanted you to at least have an opportunity to experience the big picture. Because
We don't want to create any islands, that's for sure.
Oh, exactly. And you don't get that from a developer. It's backwards when a single parcel is leading the charge to make a change like this for the future. So this is really the chance for the village board and staff too to get educated on a more grandiose plan. I mean, I think you see it with what Somerset is doing. I mean, their plan is, as I listen to this, same principles, it's just different. It's all designed around the space in that building. This is the space outside the building, but it's really all the same principles. The same thing Motorola campus in Schaumburg. It's different than this. It's similar, but it's different. It's the same principles, but it's a different type of layout. They were able to start from scratch in certain areas. So we have a lot of existing pieces here that need to be considered, obviously. So anyway, that was really the goal, and I know this was a lengthy presentation by Lakota, but it seems odd or feels odd to maybe not have a conclusion and a final plan that we're going to wave around, but I think what's more important was bringing everybody along, and as Jim said, to feed into what we hope to be an update to the comp plan, as well as the analysis we'd like to do with the Barrington interchange area, which will be very different than this, but again, needs a holistic study done to kind of help us.
Let me ask you one other question. When Sears came in originally and bought that property, there was no talk about residential whatsoever, and I don't think it was in Sears's ideas whatsoever. Is there some kind of a contract or something that Sears put in there?
I'll defer to the Sears expert.
A covenant that they put in?
Mark Sears and Roebuck Copeland.
Yeah.
Speaking as the Sears guy, the original development agreement between the village and Sears has expired, so there's nothing there that prevents us from doing anything that we would like. We would need to change the zoning, which currently does not, any of the three different categories, does not allow any residential. So if the board wanted to proactively look at that, we could come up with a new zoning category or one of the existing zoning categories, and it might narrow the range of housing options from everything under the sun to, from half-acre lots all the way to, 600-square-foot apartments. You may want to focus on a more narrow range of that. So that's something that we could think about. But there's no other contract or agreement with Sears that would need to be amended. It's really just, at this point, it's just the zoning. Pete, that's all I can think of, right?
Well, I think we might have to look at the POA because that is a covenant running with that land. And I think they do have a lot of site approval and use approval, possibly. So, but there might be a way out of it. You would know, Mark, better than anybody else.
Well, the POA will always have their rights to development review. But we invited the POA to the open house. We've included them in the stakeholder interviews and meetings, and we've kept them apprised of the process. They've had representatives that showed up at the open house that seemed pretty interested in what we were talking about. So I don't think they're necessarily going to slam the door in our face on that.
And the contract broker for Sears is actively working with two different residential developers on parcels 1 and 2. And the POA is controlled by Sears. So I understand what Art's saying.
Yeah.
But structurally, absolutely. I mean, Sears has been quietly advocating for residential on some of the properties they still own for, geez, Mayor, 8, 10 years probably at this point. And the village has been resistant for obvious reasons. I mean, the reality is we almost got Haribo, the candy company, to go on those 2 parcels as well, during the middle of them pushing residential. So the context of what type of residential, when and how, and the bigger picture, I think Peter and Trustee Mills said it really, really well.
Go ahead.
The only thing that I know we're always aware of, and the map that's presently showing is a good indication of that, is we have a parcel that's Prairie Stone right there, and you talk about rooftops. And as you look to the north, you see all Forest Preserve up there, and it's, no rooftops are going to go there. And if you go northeast, you're right up into Barrington Hills and South Barrington, and they're going to stay at 5 acres or 2 acres. And if you go west, depends what happens with Plody, but there's a nature preserve out there or some type of fishing club and all the rest of that. And of course, east, we have a little piece of property there, and then we get back into South Barrington. So the realities of it is that to put any type of significant rooftops out there, that's going to affect the number of houses from a center point. The only land we really have for a large number is going to the south, of which the village still has a lot of undeveloped property. But we are kind of cut off in different directions.
Yeah. This shouldn't be our dialogue, but I don't underestimate the fact that Allstate went away, and there's been zero interest in anything there since it went away, and the retail market's not there at all. So maybe they could get office there. We'll all wait and see and look back 10, 15 years from now and see what's on these properties, if anything. And the one thing that we all know is that the village is in it for the long haul, and markets change as time goes on.
And again, this is where it comes back to, that this plan, this area is an opportunity to complement what's already happened, and you have your strengths in the rest of the village. You have an awful lot of single-family homes. There's no shortage of that stock. I think how do you make that more competitive, and how to get people to come to those homes over others in the northwest suburban market? And so what are the other pieces that are missing? Entertainment, access, proximity to work, excellent education, mix of uses, things to do, activities. That's what may not be as well represented here as in some of your other neighboring communities.
Thank you. I think it's just ended right here with the end of the discussion. All right, let's move on. We have reports, 3 of them, for information only. First is the Planning Division Monthly Report. Anybody have any questions regarding that? That'll be received and filed. Second is the Code Enforcement Division Monthly Report. Anybody have any questions? That'll be received and filed. Third is the Economic Development and Tourism Monthly Report. Any questions on that? That'll be received and filed. President's Report.
It'll be a short one, I guarantee. Happy birthday to Trustee Gate. He'll be celebrating his birthday on Saturday, the 13th, so
Thank you.
happy birthday. And this Wednesday, the Arts Commission's going to have Catherine the Great performed by local artist Jenny Riddle. The show takes place right here at Village Hall. Doors open at 12:30 p.m. and will include complimentary refreshments. There's no fee to attend. For additional information, call Sue at 847-781-2606. On Tuesday, April 2nd, we all went out to Bell Works and got our picture taken, and accompanied a potential, someone who might be a potential tenant there go through the building, so that was interesting. And they've had quite a few already come through. Then we had our Celtic Fest Commission meeting on that late afternoon. Wednesday the 3rd, I attended the Executive Committee for the Northwest Municipal Conference. And on Saturday, we had the Easter Bunny Breakfast for Children with Disabilities at the Township Office. That was very nicely done, Trustee Newell. And today, I attended the Wings Leadership Board meeting, and we also had a little celebration for Trustee Gaeta's birthday, and that's it.
Thank you. We have nothing in other or items in review, so looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We're adjourned.